That's an old ship dog. Yeah, so what I was saying, just being here in the studio, getting set up, and come over to my seat, and the mic is not set up, and I'm thinking, where the hell is my roadie to set me up? And it reminded me of the old days when I was pretending to be a rock star. Now I'm pretending to be a podcaster, but back then I was pretending to be a rock star, and we would get these shows where we would open up for... We were like opening up for Machine Head at the Crazy Donkey on Long Island, and we thought like we made it. Like, this is huge. I can't
believe you don't have a record contract.
No record contract. And but I just remember, like, Machine Head had 2 buses outside. They had a team of people setting up their whole shit like hours before they got on stage. Yeah, and we had to set up in front of their stuff, right? Which was already kind of like demoralizing.
You can see all their nice equipment behind you.
It's gorgeous. And then they covered up, and they're like, don't touch any of this. So the roadies are telling you, giving you an attitude, and it's your turn to go on, and you in the dark behind this curtain, you get to put your amp up there. And then you play, and there's a big crowd, and, they're just waiting for Machine Head. They don't care about us.
Right.
And then you come up, you feel like a rock star, and then you got to go back out in front of everybody and, be your own roadie.
Put the stuff back in the van.
Put the stuff back in the van. Very excited to record the show today. Before we start the show, this episode is brought to you by the Recovery in the Middle Ages Patreon.
The what?
What is Patreon? It is a members-only subscription service that gives us the latitude to create more content, get backstage dirt, and a closer connection to the Monkster community while financially supporting the Herculean efforts required to keep the RMA movement moving forward.
It certainly does seem Herculean.
I think I overwrote this. Members will members will get extra mini shows, maybe sometimes full shows. Pictures, exclusive merch for joining. We're working on that, and an added level of support for all of our recoveries.
That's right. You pay us money, we support your recovery.
Well, we all do it together. It's just like it's already hard to make a lot of time for doing this right, and we want to do more. But in order to justify it to our wives and families, it has to not cost us stuff. So
that's the problem.
But it's a lot of fun, and it makes us feel good. So go to patreon.com, patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages to learn more and sign up.
Aren't you going to spell that?
No,
don't do that.
I won't do that. Anyway, we are committed to taking it to the next level and delivering the goods. And
we have a few, don't we?
Yeah.
A few people have already signed up.
Yes.
God knows why.
There's some stuff on there already. We're getting a hang, but yeah.
Elizabeth, Bo, Corey, the lone twat wharf dad. Nat wrote that, not me, and Melissa.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, guys. Thank you so much. And I've already profusely thanked you for coming on, but so I'll back off a little bit. But I said the lone twat wharf dad because he's the only reason now that I tweet anything, because he's the one fan. Oh. He's the one Monkster who actually
uses Twitter.
Yes, yeah. So he's the lone twat.
Well, it's a very middle-aged crowd. I don't think a lot of them know how to use Twitter.
Yeah, well, I certainly hardly do.
I prefer not to use Twitter.
But thanks for your support. This is going to be fun.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about 2 middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Natx.
And I'm Mike.
And boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, the pressure mounts as Christmas... I'm sorry, you should read that. You wrote it. Go ahead.
Today...
Wait, hold on. Go ahead.
Today on RMA, the pressure mounts as Christmas Day looms large just over the horizon, and saddle up the recovery horse as we ride with Paul Churchill, architect and creator of the recovery elevator empire. We are very excited to have Paul Churchill on the show today.
Hopefully he shows up, because I sent him a confirmation email and he did not respond.
I thought I saw a response to that.
This morning?
No, last night. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw, I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, okay.
And then I typed a whole thing back to him, like, we're so happy to have you, and this is going to be great. And then I looked at it, and I'm like, I'm not going to send that.
Yeah,
it's a little too. Yeah, so right. I didn't. I've been doing that a lot lately, where I'll get an idea, I'll see something on a post, and I'll just type a bunch of comments, and I'm like, and then I don't post it.
I've been doing that in the local parent group lately because of the controversy over yes, over the children having to wear masks for their choral presentations this time of the year, and there's been quite a kerfuffle about that. And I've resisted the urge to weigh in, and I attribute that to meditation, or to, as Paul Churchill is fond of saying, you are not your thoughts. You need to take a step back from the little interior voice in your head that's telling you to do all of this weird and bad shit. Yeah. And if you just create some distance between those thoughts and your next action, you end up fighting a lot less with the soccer moms on Facebook.
Yeah, it's a real Zen move. And I'm reading more and more about, I've been identifying with this idea of the inner addict for a long time, as soon as I first heard the notion. And now it's like a synchronicity. I'm seeing it in, a lot of the books we've been reading. Mention some version of, separating from your ego, and these passing thoughts are not you, and all of that.
And the inner addict is the same thing as the addictive voice that Jack Trimpey was talking about a few weeks ago, right?
Yes.
It's that stream of thoughts that is not actually you. It's this discrete thing inside of you.
Yeah, and it's amazing. We see this in so many different speakers, and they use different words to describe it, and it's like, reminds me of the Shakespearean quote, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." So they're like kind of all describing the same thing with different words. The inner addict, it's whatever. And so Paul talks about that a lot. And maybe what you guys out there might not know, we've mentioned it before, but recovery...
Paul has a poodle.
He has a poodle named Ben.
Oh, that's not what you were going to say.
I was going to say Recovery Elevator is responsible for Mike and I coming out of the closet to each other.
You know what? Let's tell that story again when Paul is on the phone.
Right. So this is sort of an important thing. Yeah. His podcast, Recovery Elevator, which it really helped both of us.
Mm-hmm. He may be happy to hear that he was the genesis of us creating a competing podcast.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure he would agree that we're not exactly competing with this podcast.
We're a small fish in a large pond.
Yeah.
That reminds me. Yesterday, I was considering doing this Naked Mind coaching certification. Yeah. Until I found out what the price was.
Right.
And I also had to check out how much time I had versus the reality of all that. So anyway, the guy who was supposed to interview me as my last hurdle for joining the program, I canceled my interview with him when I decided not to do it. And I said, not only, do I have a full-time job, but I'm also doing this podcast. And he wrote back, "Hey, I have a recovery podcast too." And I was like, well, I guess everybody has a recovery podcast. But his recovery podcast is actually good. I listened to it yesterday on the way to pick up my son. You would think that I would have, if I was going to plug it, I would remember the name, but I'll have to put that on later. But anyway, he had on William Porter. Do you know who William Porter is?
I don't think so.
He wrote a book very similar to Alcohol is Shit and Annie's book, and it was sort of that triumvirate of books that got me beginning my recovery journey. So I was pleased to see that. And he has volunteered to come on our podcast.
Really?
Of course. Not William Porter, but the other guy.
Lovely. I think
he's British, so he'll be his accent will be interesting.
Great. So all of our UK fans out there will feel at home. Speaking of, I'd like to welcome all the Monksters listening stateside, around the world, down the street, across the table, and right next door. Welcome all. Settle in, buckle up, and get ready for excitement, comedy, tragedy, intrigue, mystery, and so much more. Where can they find us, Mike?
If you finger your keyboard, thank you for that, Nat.
Leave that in there.
Yes, you can log on to middleagesrecovery.com, listen to past shows, buy some merchandise through the web store. So as I indicated in my my shameless plug for you to buy merchandise yesterday, everybody, if you order today or tomorrow or even on Sunday, there's a very good chance that you will receive your branded Recovery in the Middle Ages swag before Christmas, because we ship 3-day USPS.
Yeah, so you want to...
Now is your last chance to tell your relatives that they have a drinking problem by buying them an RMA shirt or a sticker for your laptop. But once you're over there on middleagesrecovery.com, you can fill out our Tell Us Your Story form and tell us your story.
Yes.
Selected entries will be read on the show. Also, I think our RMA hotline is still up. You can call us at 516-888-6297.
See, I
We're
got
looking
the whole
for
number
stories
in
of
there.
what your recovery looks like. And if you were so inclined, some of your thoughts on the show and a holiday message for the upcoming holiday special, which will drop on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Is that wise?
I don't
Should we
know.
drop a show on Christmas Eve? Will anyone listen to it?
I don't know. I think so, because people were like off of work. They're at their relative's house maybe, and they don't want to listen to what the relatives are saying to them and
Right.
criticizing them or whatever. So you just put in the podcast, get your earbuds in,
Yeah, grab a Pepsi, go hide in the closet,
kick
listen to
back
us.
in your ugly Christmas sweater for the sweet sounds of RMA.
We will select some of those voicemails. If not, we'll try to get to them all.
We have a ton. It's just so, guys, thank you for calling in and leaving these messages. I feel like this should be an ongoing thing for the show. Like,
Yeah.
I love it when I hear that stuff on Dopey when the people call in.
Right.
So I guess it would be a direct ripoff of that. But I think it's a great idea. So giving attribution where it is deserved.
Also, go to the Apple Podcast app if you can and leave us a 5-star review. I got one of the people that left a voicemail said that he tried and he was unable to execute on that. So I don't know.
It might have been something on Apple's end.
Right. You can join our Facebook group, our private Facebook group, which Nat and I are very active in. Like our public-facing Facebook page, and then we can invite you into the inner sanctum.
Yeah.
Not the inner sanctum, but the inner sanctum.
I think even if they're not likers of the page, they can go to the sign-up link, but I'm not sure.
I don't know.
And
Facebook is fucked. I hate them.
Yep.
Finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. If you
Yeah.
get something out of it, share the love and help grow the RMA movement.
A word on that. I had a fan message us last. I don't know if you saw this or not maybe the day before, and said, he's been listening since the beginning. Just said some really nice things and was like, "What can I do to help? Is there anything you need me to do, or just kind of just wanting to help out?" And I
You can
said,
write a check to...
Right, fill out. I said, share it. Go to other recovery groups. Because if we go on and push our own podcast, this is not met with smiling faces. So
Well, it depends.
it depends if you're anonymous and doing it under a different name or something. But
I'm semi-anonymous at this point.
share it. So we do have a story, sort of, right? This is a response.
We do.
It's
right?
Or is this a review? I'll read it.
Read it.
This is from the a very new Monkster. Her name is Julie. We spoke about her a little bit last week during Monkster's Speak, and I accused her of being a professional piano player. And she writes, "Good morning, Nat. Listen to this week's podcast, of course. And again, I loved it and learned so much from it. Thank you. And yes, I do play piano for a living. I am an orchestra pianist, and I also do musical theater, play in a few bands, and do a lot of musical arranging. And are
Cool.
you single? That's what I'd like to know."
Are you?
No, I'm just I'm just saying it sounds like the perfect woman. I'm grateful that work came.
I'd like to think your wife is the perfect woman.
Of course she is. I'm talking parallel universe.
Okay, right.
I'm grateful that work came back last year. I know that a lot of people in recovery benefited when COVID happened, since it gave them a reset. I unfortunately went in the opposite direction. Since my work came to a screeching halt, I used it as an excuse to drink a lot and often. When the world started to bounce back, I was slow to respond, and only recently am I starting to find my footing again. I've gone for so long without caring. And I know it's because of alcohol. Absolutely. That apathy just kind of seeps in, man.
Feeling of inner deadness. It's no fun. Anhedonia.
Yes. Great word.
Yes.
Anhedonia.
Thank you, Ryan, from Rehab, who typed that in a comment this week.
Yes. Appreciate
I love that
it.
word.
I wasn't close to being as productive as I could have been during the quarantine. Now I have multiple projects happening this coming year, and I have no choice but to be productive. That's my biggest inspiration to stop drinking. That, and I just owe it to myself. I joined Cafe Ari a month ago.
Wow.
Cafe Ari, for the listeners, that's the guest we're having on, is his therapeutic community. Actually, I don't know if we could call it therapeutic. It's the private recovery support group online.
Right.
So she's a member of that. So hopefully she'll like this.
Well, that
interview.
was very apropos of our episode this week to find a Cafe RE member. How did that happen?
That was not on purpose. They have been turning points for me. For the first time in a long time, I am able to go days on end without alcohol and realize the psychological and emotional benefits. I'm working towards getting 100% alcohol free. I am so grateful to you and your willingness to share so much every week with your listeners. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Merry Christmas. Sincerely, Julie, or as I now call her, Julie Keys. She is the official Monkster bard.
Maybe she can write one of those songs that you were promising the people as part of our Patreon.
Yeah. So, Julie, you may or may not know that I'm a music school dropout. I went to the Crane School of Music. I was a senior when I changed majors, and I don't know. I relate every time I meet someone who is like doing what you're doing. I do have a little bit of that, like, man, the road not traveled. Like, I was on a track where I could have been, a music teacher, or, I could have been playing professionally, and, even if it was just in a pit band, and like, I didn't have illusions of grandeur or delusions. Just to be a working musician, I don't know, it was a dream of mine. It's something I worked to become for a long time, and my life didn't go that way, and a lot of it was because of drugs.
Yeah, and I mean, Julie, you're working on being 100% alcohol free, and that is awesome. I think you're going to notice, if you haven't already, that your playing is going to improve immeasurably, because I'm just a little guy who sits in my living room and hacks away on an acoustic guitar, but I noticed I was able to hit notes, and I wasn't as...
It's amazing.
You know how your mind just kind of like can see more measures into the future, you know what I mean? And it's very sort of a weird thing, but how the mind works with music. But
I've been noticing that too. Drugs and music and alcohol went together for me for so long. I didn't think I could do it without taking it. So only recently I've picked up my guitar again. I've been playing, and the way I get back into guitar is I don't know a lot of songs. I never was in cover bands. I studied classical guitar and I wrote rock music.
You're like a real musician.
Well, but I always wished I could be one of those guys. That's why when you play those songs, I'm so impressed, because I never took the time to learn like all the James Taylor stuff I wanted to learn. And but in any case, now when I'm practicing and I'm sober, I'm noticing that I'm like, wow, this sounds pretty good. Whereas I have a memory, more than one memory, of myself being like cracked out or wasted, playing the guitar and not being able to even play things I wrote. And that frustration of my brain is thinking of this one idea, but the hands can't do it.
Right.
And it's just, it's so great. And I'd love to hear from you about that, Julia, and how your playing and practicing changed. Probably no one else wants to hear about that, but
we're interested.
Yeah, so, very interested. Yeah. And that brings us to
Monksters Speak. So a good one this week, Nat. I actually was thinking of dropping one. Maybe I'll do next week, but this is great because the question this week that you posed to the group was, how do you feel about the term alcoholic? Which is a very apropos question, because our guest this week, Paul Churchill, writes in his book Alcohol is Shit that he broke up with the word alcoholic. And I'm going to ask Paul, or we're going to ask Paul, what his feelings are about the word alcoholic.
Yeah, so, because that book was written, like 4 years ago?
2019.
So, I bet you some of his opinions and, things have evolved.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you're alive, you're evolving, right?
I think the ayahuasca that he got into was after the book?
No.
Oh, it was before. Okay.
Yeah, because he mentioned...
it's interesting.
Yeah, he mentioned making up... In the book, he wrote about how when they went down there for the ayahuasca ceremony, they made up T-shirts that said Ego Dissolution Tour 2019 or something like that. So anyway, we got probably more response on this question than we've gotten on any other one.
Yeah.
It's really interesting what people feel about this word and how they... internalize it to them.
It's a lightning rod.
So do you want me to read the first one and then we can take turns?
You may.
Okay. So Chase S. says, I am neutral. I like it as a tool to identify my issue that even a normie can understand. A regular person is going to be a little lost if I say alcohol abuse disorder, or the newest treatment term, non-prescription opiate medication abuse.
Ooh, I don't know that one.
I don't know that one either, but
I like it.
That is a lot to say. How about like a NPOMA?
Yeah, even better.
Otherwise known as an addict. I personally think if it offends you, that is your problem for giving some silly letters that much power over your emotional state. Just an opinion, though. Interesting. I mean, personally, I don't think there is much of a difference between a normie and someone who's addicted to something. I think it's every normie has a chance to end up at the other end of the spectrum given the right circumstances.
Yeah, and that's some of the thinking I'm hearing coming out of like Annie Grace and some of those books we've been reading is this idea that it's not an alcoholic, and everybody has potential to become addicted or is on some part of the sliding scale.
Yeah, there's a
towards
slope.
Dependence.
Right. And, the further you crawl down into the pitcher plant, the more likely it is you're going to get stuck.
That's it. Anna Q says, I prefer to think of myself as addicted to alcohol. It's a highly addictive drug after all. The ick doesn't particularly offend me, though. This interview sounds good.
That's a good way to... I like that. Addicted to alcohol because it's a highly addictive drug.
It's called alcoholism, not alcoholism.
Well, that forecloses the possibility for recovery, doesn't it? Complete recovery.
Alcoholism. Lisa D.
Lisa D says, Paul Churchill. I listened. I don't know how what inflection that comes from. I listened to Recovery Elevator regularly in early sobriety, as did I. I feel more comfortable saying I'm a woman in long-term recovery. I was told in AA meetings out of respect to say I'm an alcoholic, but I stopped a few years ago. It's too negative for my journey right now. I definitely abused alcohol, so I could say that. Yeah. Sure.
There's a side of the coin, I guess you could say, where people call themselves junkies when they're recovered or in recovery. And it's like, there's this debate, is it a good idea, like after you're in recovery and you're not using, to continue to call yourself a junkie? But some people, they're like, it's one of those things like, that's our word. It's like you're owning it. And I've heard, their opinion on why it's important to them to continue to identify as a junkie, even though they're no longer, on the streets and using. So it's interesting.
Wouldn't it be more appropriate to say I'm a potential junkie again or something?
Yeah. Or to say, I have a non-prescription opiate medication abuse disorder.
Right.
Corey C. says, I personally don't label myself. I am no longer addicted to alcohol because I stopped drinking it. Just like I am no longer addicted to nicotine because I stopped smoking cigarettes. The only difference is that I never feel compelled to make excuses for why I don't smoke.
Well, that is true. Alcohol is that thing that makes you have to excuse yourself why you don't do it, right? But nobody asks the same question about cigarettes.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Tony W. says, I have an alcohol dependency issue. I'll always have that as an issue, just like I used to smoke. I can't smoke socially. If I smoke a cigarette, I'll quickly be right back in the habit. If you call that an alcoholic, that's okay. That's the other side of that coin.
Yeah, and Tony is in Kentucky, and he's where he lives has been hit pretty hard by the
that's Tony
tornado. So our heart goes out to you, Tony. Let us know you're doing good. He's still been posting on the group, so he's live.
Well, he said that his area is not overly affected, but a place where he used to live and where he knows a lot of people got hit pretty hard.
And I can't even imagine the trauma of, it's like the end of the world, it looks like.
Yeah, it looks really terrible.
Hope says, I am a woman of many labels, and yes, alcoholic is one, but I'm not defined by anyone. I share here because, in a sense, it's anonymous. Except I just called your name out, but I didn't read your last name. Out in the world, though, I prefer to keep my non-drinking status to myself. If I'm asked why I don't drink, I just reply, I don't. No further explanation needed. No, it's a complete sentence. Thank you, Hope. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder what the point of a self-label like that is.
I think of it like it helps to name the problem so that you can wrap your mind around it and then get your treatment in order. So,
well, maybe terminology needs to change in the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, they've changed the definition of alcohol abuse many times, and they call it by different things as time goes by to be more specific about what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like alcohol use disorder as opposed to alcoholic.
It's like, I feel like you can't treat it if you don't name it. I always liken it to, since I love paranormal stuff, like a demon possession in the movies, and reports are like, once you learn the demon's name, then you have power over it. Yeah, and that's why they don't want to give up the name. And
that sounds like AA to me.
Give up the ghost. Amy E. says, this is a great discussion. We don't call people who are addicted to heroin heroinics or addicted to nicotine. Nicotinics. It's crazy that we quit, get healthy, and when we are no longer taking the drug of choice, we are punished or labeled with a problem. I didn't have a rock bottom, but I believe I was headed there. I wasn't physically addicted. I had an addiction to my daily ritual. My mind had been wired that alcohol goes with life.
Yes, exactly.
What an effing lie we have all been sold. And
I think I found the Annie Grace person in the room.
Yeah. I mean, I get mad. When I started to get mad about it, like, you lied to me, to my inner addict when I'm yelling at myself. You lied to me. And so when my inner addict tries to tell me to do something, I tell him to fuck off because I know he does not have my best interest at heart. And
I also yell at the purveyors of alcohol. Like, for example, if I see a guy delivering Miller Lite to the beer center, I go, you lied to me.
You motherfucker.
You fucker. Take that alcohol and shove it up your ass.
You killed my grandfather, you asshole.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure he's going and reporting back to corporate. Anyway, so this fellow Mike Ross says, I hate the term. From Smart Recovery, the term alcoholic carries a lot of cultural baggage and stigma. Historically, substance misuse has been treated as a moral failing rather than a serious mental health condition. Thinking about yourself or a loved one as a alcoholic, you can see my air quotes, is a limiting and pejorative approach that often downplays the fact that unhealthy alcohol use and alcohol use disorder are health conditions that can be resolved. Also, alcohol problems are not a yes or a no issue. I do not believe there is a binary line between alcoholics and so-called normies. Didn't I? I think I just said that. Wow. I think anyone can develop an alcohol problem given the right circumstances, so you don't need to be at rock bottom to experience alcohol problems and want to change. It's important to remember that drinking problems can exist at any point on a scale between none and severe.
Wow. Mike Ross.
Yeah.
Nailing it.
Yeah. Give myself a hand.
Yay. All right. And that was the last of that because we've got some life update. I just want to give you an update. We have breaking news from the RMA newsroom. Editor at large, Grant B. G Money Smooth just reported that he just heard from Paul Churchill and we are good to go. And
what does that mean?
He'll be there.
Okay.
He's ready.
I was hoping he was good to go.
Yeah.
Like, does he mean he wants us to call him right now?
No, just that he'll be there at 10.
All right.
And Grant is killing it, man. This is a huge interview.
Yeah. Grant, you were like the Buddha of the RMA movement.
So, get us more interviews. Great. And Maya
Buddha.
Zalovitz, he thinks he can help connect with. So, all right.
Yeah, we should definitely take him up on that one for the new year. I have lots I want to talk to her about.
So, life update. One of the biggest things that we're so excited about right now is this Patreon account. We're like, this has been keeping me up at night, especially since we got a few patrons. I'm like, shit, we really got to put something out good. So this has breathed new life into the show. It's really cool. I mean, like, we could do so much stuff. There's like, maybe we'll make, Patreon can set it up so that we can send the patrons like some kind of like mug or a branded RMA, whatever, and tattoo. They automatically send it to the patrons. Like, if we want, we could do it every 3 months.
That sounds expensive.
It is, but I really, I want to do something cool.
I have to say, you surprised me with this Patreon. So I know we had this in the wings, but I imagine my shock when not only did you create the Patreon, but then people started signing up, and I was like, "Fuck! I have to buy Christmas presents and produce content for the Patreon now." This is it caused me a considerable amount of anxiety the other day, and I think I sent you a whole stream of texts venting like an asshole about.
I wasn't happy. And
I'm okay with it now. I've and I appreciate the work that went into putting it together.
It just gives us a goal. I don't know. Like, we already had a goal, but this sort of was like,
what's our goal?
I don't know. Our goal is to create awesome stuff and help people recover.
Oh yeah,
and help us recover.
I just had a deja vu.
Yeah.
Did we have this conversation before?
Maybe
on an earlier episode. Monksters, if you recall me and Nat talking about this, let me know.
Yeah. So, I don't know, guys. I think this is something we're going to do together. Like, I'm asking the Monksters who joined up already. We're talking back and forth. I mean, they're almost like a creative team, you know, because I'm like, all right, guys, what do we do? Like, what do you want to do? So this is really,
I mean, that is the ultimate in an amazing use of your fan base, is that you charge them money and then make them come up with ideas for the Patreon.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
It's fun for everyone. So yeah, if you want to come, it's almost like being a producer on the show, because you know it's so
we don't have one, so
right. But we have stuff in the works. We're definitely going to do at least a weekly half an hour, 15 minutes to half an hour.
Jesus Christ,
bonus show. We got to do that minimum, right? I mean, this is good money people are paying.
I've been looking into video systems so we can do some streaming stuff on there, and you know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I posted some pictures of me and Mike from my ticket issue when he was representing me in the ticket. So we're going to do some backstage posts.
Did you see that guy, Bo, was like,
yeah,
I can't believe. So then I posted a picture of myself in 1988 on the way to a Dead show.
Yeah,
I was like, here you go, buddy.
Yeah. That was Bo that said. I thought that was Wharf Dad.
Maybe it was, I don't know.
Because Wharf Dad is the Deadhead.
By the name, I would assume. Yeah.
So come on there. Listen, we're still in the private group. I mean, that's our main, right? You know, we're always going to be with you guys. And that's the whole point of this thing.
Right.
So what exciting things happened to you last week?
You know, we were sitting here yesterday trying to think of exciting things that happened this week. And you know what?
What?
We didn't come up with a lot.
I know. I don't know, like, why?
Yeah.
Usually I have so much stuff on my like I do a draft outline and I sort of journal and write things down as they happen so I can. And this week, you know, the big problem this week, there was, I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about this, but a very close family friend passed away. And that really just fucked my whole week up. Like anything I was thinking about doing, it was Monday I learned about it. Or maybe it was Sunday I learned about it. It was a member of our church. His family and our family we're like family. You know, we know them really well. In any case, it was just shock and a surprise. Anytime a 29-year-old passes away,
it's crazy.
I don't know
the
exact reasons, but I can only speculate. You know, it was probably not natural causes. In any case, and then we had this heart-wrenching service at my church, and it was just, it's been so difficult, and it really has affected me because, you know, sometimes I think, man, that could have been me, and then so, you know, I nearly died, and so when I'm looking at all of the people there and the family and just the sadness, and the sadness I felt, I mean, I was like a mess. I ended up having to just go home after that because I was just so upset. And even my kids were like, well, you know, like, wow, they're being nicer to me, you know, even though I try to like hide it a little bit.
Yeah. That must have been really tough, man.
Yeah. So, you know, again, this is a reminder that, and it really a great family. I mean, the kid just came back from South Africa building an orphanage, literally like saints, these people, and couldn't be more generous, and it couldn't be a better family. And still, this can happen.
Yeah, it can happen.
So that was awful, but the upside was not to that, but the good thing that happened was we had tree lighting in town.
Yeah, that was interesting because it was also like 60 degrees that day, and it was like 40-mile-an-hour winds and rain. But they do it nice though. Every year it's gotten a little bit better. They closed the street down. They put burning fire pits in the middle of the street. Which,
oh, really?
I mean, that sounds like
I didn't see that.
Mad Max, but it's actually nicer than that. Yeah, like a couple pits, and then they have free hot cocoa for the kids.
Right? They did a portable ice skating thing.
Yeah, but which is plastic.
I don't know.
It's very weird.
Oh, it's one of those?
Yeah.
They had that at Woodlock.
I did that one year, and I was like, this is ridiculous.
It's weird.
Yeah. Anyway, but it was nice. I took Ben down there because he mostly sits on the couch and plays video games if I don't drag him out of the house. So I got him out of the house. We went for a walk down here, stopped by your store. You know, I gave you a cookie. Are you okay over there?
Sorry, I was messing with the mic.
And Ben ate his first apple turnover. It was a very exciting day.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's one of those things. They were asking businesses to set up tables and stuff like that, and I don't like doing that. And I don't have a lot of inventory left that I want to sell necessarily, or I don't know. I just didn't want to do it. But I stayed open, and we had some customers, and my wife and Max and Noah went, but it was a real problem getting my oldest to go. He just it was this big fight. But ultimately, I think what happened was because all of a sudden he changed his mind and apologized to my wife.
Right.
I'm like, what happened?
That's weird.
Well, his girlfriend Vienna was there, so
okay.
So she's good for something. Getting Noah to do things. But that brings me to sort of something that I've been struggling with is, you guys know I own this little sports store. And I finally come to terms with the fact that I've got to close this thing. And this is creating quite a bit of turmoil, inner turmoil. I mean, I almost went through the stages of grief. When I look back on how I was feeling about it, I was in denial. That's probably why I signed the second lease. And I was, angry. And finally, I've got acceptance.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, right? That's the... stages of grief.
The stages of grief. But this is a huge turning point in my life coming up in the next couple of months. I've been doing this for about 4 years. I put my everything into this. And listen, I have to accept that it's just not coming back. And I have so much more that I want to do. I mean, I want to put more time into this podcast. I have this, a business consulting part-time job right now that, and in the medical billing company I can flip that and do more. I want to get my MSW, which is a master's in social work. I want to get my recovery coaching certificate, and I feel like I'm getting a calling to. I just want to to help people who are sick and suffering. I don't know. It seems to be what other when I write stuff for the show or when I'm working on this show, that's when I'm excited, and I'm just passionate about it. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do it. So there's a lot of possibilities. If you guys have any suggestions on what I should do with the rest of my life, or as my wife says, what do I want to do when I grow up? It's going to be a crazy next couple of months, so wish me luck as I try and slowly back out of this quagmire.
Well, what's the old expression? If you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life, sort of a thing. So maybe the pandemic and everything was just a universal synchronicity saying, Nat, it's time for the next step.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to a few Monksters, just helping them through trying to get clean, and it really is it's so rewarding, and it helps me stay clean. And then maybe that's something, I don't know, maybe there's a profession.
Just be mindful during the transition of the potential for, pitfalls in your recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any big change comes with anxiety and stuff,
Yeah, so
I'll keep an eye on you.
If I'm a little on edge, but through this whole thing, I haven't drank over it. Not yet.
Good. Not yet.
Yeah.
Just leave the door open.
We got about 7 minutes. So,
all right, I tell you what, let's take a break. And when we come back, it'll be to speak with Paul Churchill, our interview today. Okay.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Sure.
All right. I need a minute.
We'll be right back after these words. Okay, that was horrifying. We were just taking a bathroom break.
It's usually horrifying.
Yeah, and sorry.
The noise.
I know.
Stop making the noise.
I'm very twitchy. If you guys saw me on the Annie Grace YouTube video, my hands are everywhere. I just lost the outline. I went up. We went to go to the bathroom. I put it down somewhere, and you guys know I need this thing. It's like my security blanket. And I don't know where I put it. And I was frantically running around the studio. But I found it. Get ready to... Yeah.
This Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Paul.
This is Mike and Nat from the Recovery in the Middle Ages podcast. How are you?
Yeah. Good. How are you guys doing?
Great, man. We were just talking about how nervous we are to talk to you. So here we are.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Of course. I'm looking forward to it. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. We got you.
Okay.
All right, we have a gratuitous introduction for you.
I'm going to read that first, and then we can get into it, okay?
Okay, yeah, give me just a quick second. Let me get some water.
Sure thing.
Sure thing. Why don't you...
I'll just start going, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In 2006, at the age of 23, Paul Churchill moved to Granada, Spain, where he purchased a bar. During the following 3 years, he became addicted to alcohol, blacking out close to 7 nights a week. But in 2009, Paul walked away from the bar, hoping a geographical cure would curtail the drinking, but he continued to drink for another 5 years until he took his last drink on September 6, 2014. In February of 2015, Paul launched the Recovery Elevator podcast as an accountability tool to quit drinking. Today, the podcast has surpassed 3 million downloads, is in the 95th percentile of all podcasts on iTunes, and has been downloaded in 50 states and over 145 countries. In September of 2019, and this is about the same time that I quit drinking myself, he released the book Alcohol is Shit, How to Ditch the Booze, Reignite Your Life, and Recover the Person You Were Always Meant to Be. I highly recommend it. Paul currently lives in Bozeman, Montana, loves to get outside and hike with his sober sidekick standard poodle Ben, and in the wintertime he does his best not to injure himself while playing ice hockey. Paul, saddle up and welcome to RMA.
Wait, did he come back?
Yeah.
Oh, you're back. He's back. Okay.
I'm here. I'm
Right.
liking that. I'm here right now. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Super.
Yeah.
Just on a personal note, Paul, it was really the confluence between Recovery Elevator, William Porter's book, and This Naked Mind that got me started on my own recovery journey at the end of July of 2019. I think when I came across Recovery Elevator, it was the first time I had come across like a recovery mindset or a recovery program that didn't sort of start and end with AA or with the 12 steps. And I found that incredibly refreshing. And as somebody that has practiced Buddhism for a number of years, I found your approach to the idea of you not being your thoughts and so forth to be something that I had not really encountered in recovery before. So I was really impressed by that. But in the spirit of the moment, I figured I would start out with this question. If you could give some listeners some background about yourself, where you're from, what do you like to do for a living, your age, do you have a family, and what do you like to do for fun?
Okay, all right.
I'm stealing that from your podcast.
Yeah. I was like, I've heard that before. I love it. It's simple. Let's keep it simple. And first off, Mike and Nat, it's great to be here with you guys, and I'm honored to be part of your journey. What I mean by that is, and thank you for saying that Recovery Elevator has been a part with some others those other names you mentioned, Annie Grace, William Porter, I think, is the author of that book. Those are big names, and I'm honored to be part of your journey because it's a difficult journey, and there's a lot of resources out there, and it can get murky at times. So I'm always happy to hear when people resonate with the message that I'm disseminating to my listeners and stuff. So thank you for saying that. Congratulations on quitting drinking. I think it was 2018 in there and 2019, and
Yes.
Congratulations. At the end of the day, we're all on the same day right now. So it's good to be chatting with you too. Okay, so my name is Paul Churchill. I currently live in Bozeman, Montana, and some exciting news in my life. I'm closing on a property in Costa Rica, about an hour west of Liberia Airport, northwest Costa Rica. I've been working on that for a couple of years, and I'm not too sure what that's going to look like in the future, but it's nature, it's outside, it's a very healthy place on the planet, and I'm looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
And for fun, yeah, thank you. And for fun, I love to get out in nature. And as you mentioned, I have a standard poodle named Ben. Mm-hmm. We go out, we bike, we hike, we do a bunch of stuff like that outside. And music, thank goodness, Mike and Nat, is coming back into my life. That used to be a major healthy component of my life. Early 20s, I was in bands, and it was very healthy. It was healthy for my soul. And then the drinking zapped all of that. And I thought when I quit drinking, it would come back the next day, but it took a couple of years, about 3 or 4 years for it to come back. And now I've got at my desk, I've got a keyboard, I've got all kinds of synthesizers and drum machines, and I do all the music for our events. It's just fun. I can lose track of time. It fuels my soul. It's fantastic. And for work, At this moment, I'm doing the Recovery Elevator podcast and that whole project. We can dive into that later if you want. I'm self-employed, and I do not have a family besides a standard poodle named Ben. I got a girlfriend at the moment, but that's where I'm at right now, and that's apparently where I'm supposed to be at.
Awesome. We were just talking to, we have a listener, our listeners send in stories, that they tell about themselves, and we read some of them on the air. And the one that we read today was by a woman who is in the process of quitting drinking herself, and she's a professional pianist.
She's an orchestral pianist.
But and Nat, Nat was a semi-professional musician, and I hack around in the living room. But it really is noteworthy how much your talent and ability and creativity comes back once you remove the alcohol.
Yeah, it takes a while, like, as you said.
It does, though.
But for a while we were just discussing this. How when I was using drugs and alcohol so much with writing and playing music that once I quit, I couldn't even imagine picking up a guitar or writing something just until maybe a couple of years. So it does come back, as you said.
Yeah, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And I tried to force it a couple times. I remember I bought a piano like 2 or 3 years into it, and it sat in a box for a while. Then I played it once for a couple of years, and then one day I was like, all right, now is the time. It's come back full force, and thank goodness, because when you're departing from alcohol, there's a balance, right? You got to be in the stuff. You got to be in the why. Why am I drinking? What am I using alcohol to cover up, right? There's a whole lot of blind spots that we need to reveal. But the second part of that is we need to find a healthy alternative to place our energies, to place our attention. That's not the addiction, right? Because the departure has to involve joy, laughter, things you look forward to,
right?
A life that doesn't require alcohol to thrive in. And music and nature, and animals, that has been key for me. And it's been the most fun science experiment, shall I say, just to see like what's working for me. I've almost like the observer of my own life and say, well, I like pineapple. I don't like kiwi. I like piano. I don't like that. And it just being so introspective of what is feeding the soul, what is good for me. And on the flip side of that is be cognizant for myself of what situations, what environments, when I walk into, for example, my body will give me a cue, a signal that says, yeah, not for us. And that's okay. We'll go to another restaurant or establishment. And, at this moment, I can go to bars, and I've been to Vegas like 6 times sober, which is like 5 times too many. It's not a problem, but sometimes when I go to, for example, okay, I'll tell this story. I used to own a vending business, and it did really well. We had bars, like vending machines in bars and restaurants. I had arcades all across the state of Montana, and eventually I had to sell that for a couple reasons. Number one, I wanted to do Recovery Elevator full time, but the other thing is I could no longer walk into those establishments. So I was a sober guy, and I was walking into a couple bars at like noontime with like my bag and screwdrivers and stuff to fix coin jams. And my body just kept giving me signals as like, we can't be here. This doesn't feel good anymore. So listen to the cues, sold the business, and now I'm doing RE full time. Thank goodness.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, what's the AA expression? If you hang out in the barbershop long enough, you're eventually
going to get a haircut.
So maybe best,
sure.
Yeah, maybe best to stay out of the bars, at least as a business. But so, how much time did you have alcohol free before you decided to start the podcast? Because Nat and I, Nat and I got together, and actually, let me just divert and tell this story, because you are pretty much indirectly responsible for Nat and I starting this podcast from the get-go, because we both belong to your Recovery Elevator Facebook group, the public-facing one.
Oh, wow.
And we live in the same town. And at the time, I was, what was I, about 7-8 months sober?
Yeah.
And you were like a year more than that?
Yeah.
And I was just on surfing around one day, and I saw that Nat had liked something on the Recovery Elevator page, and I was like, I know that guy. He owns the sporting goods store.
Yeah, and our kids are friends.
So we, I went down and sort of dropping some hints that maybe he was in recovery and so on, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Just from liking a page, right?
Yeah. Yep.
How cool is that? And tell me again, where do you guys live?
We're on the North Shore of Long Island in New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So a small town, and we were both in the closet, like like Cub Scout, leader dads, and we knew each other sort of peripherally. And then when Mike saw that, and he messaged me about something relating to our kids hanging out. And then it was one of those like tiptoeing, like, oh, so you like a Recovery Elevator, huh? What does that mean? And then when we started finally talking and we came out of the closet to each other, which sounds different than what I'm talking about. Really, though, we started to have these great conversations. And after the first couple, I'm like, wow, this is good. We should record this. Maybe this could be a lot of fun. And so, the rest is history.
But I remember thinking that you had, when you started Recovery Elevator podcast, you had less than a year also, right?
That is correct. And it sounds like you guys, same with you?
Yeah, for me, yeah.
Yeah, I had a little longer, but it was pretty nascent, The difference being I came from more of an indoctrinated 12-step background. Like I spent years and years, failing in 12-step. And Mike didn't have so much of that. So we both came from two different angles, which is actually really interesting because, Mike basically got sober with the help of like your book and Annie Grace's book and didn't come through the doors of a 12-step. So we come from slightly different angles, but basically we're really on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some commonalities, to everyone's experience who's going through this journey, But we had your example of, there's nothing that says that you have to have an X amount of time of sobriety before you can start talking to other people about sobriety. But I think you were pretty much like an innovator in that area. What was that like, having just a few months and then deciding you were going to go put it out there to the world?
Like an iconoclast.
Well, I'm not sure I even know what that word means. First off, I'm flattered. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm happy that there's some. I think that's how this should work. And then sometime down the road, someone's going to reach out to you and say, "Hey, I listened to the Middle Ages podcast, and I started my own podcast." So I think that's how this is supposed to work, which is fantastic. So to answer your question, I got the idea for Recovery Elevator right about 2 months after I quit drinking on September 7th, 2014. I remember I was going to an AA meeting, and that voice of like, "Hey, Paul, we're 2 months sober. We got this." And I was outside the AA meeting, and I was hiding behind a tree because I didn't want people to see me. And like I had this voice of like, "I got this," and another voice was like, "We don't have time for this. We've been sober for 2 months. We need to get our life started." And all of a sudden, I just stopped. It was almost like a divine moment. I stopped, and the bigger me, the truer me, the voice says, "Paul, you don't got this. If you don't go to that meeting, you're screwed. And if you don't do something else on top of that, you're also screwed." And I love podcasts. And at the same moment, the idea of a podcast showed up. And it was, of course, it was scary. It was terrifying. I went out with a YouTuber that I know that's been very successful. And he said, "Yeah, you should do it. But here's the thing. You got to be willing to put yourself fully out there because listeners are going to tell, people can tell if you're holding back, you're not being honest, or not authentic." So I launched it on February 25th, 2015. That was my first episode. So probably 6 months after September is when I quit drinking. But of course, I started working on it at 2 months in. I took a road trip went from Bozeman to Seattle, Washington, all the way down to the Mexican coast, down to San Diego, and then back just to map it all out in my mind. Because I had the feeling of it was going to change the trajectory of my life, and it has. But yeah, I just laid out the pros and cons, and it was risky. It's very risky to do this. It's such a time away from alcohol. I mean, I could have crashed and burned on a public public platform for many to see, and that's okay if I would have. It's just the nature of the beast. But I recognized I needed the accountability, and also there was another voice that says, look, if you can help people along the way, because my experience navigating quitting drinking has been very nebulous. It's extremely confusing. The whole thing, the treatment industry, even just finding a meeting sometimes can be challenging. And so I said, hey, I'm going to do this. If other people resonate with it, great. But mostly I'm doing it for myself. And for the first 3 months, Mike and Nat, I was pretty nervous. Like, there was a couple times when I was going to bed at night, I'm like episode 7, episode 10. I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? But I can pretty much unequivocally tell you that it saved my butt. I'm fairly certain if it was just me, a couple of AA homies, which is how it was for the previous years, I would have drank again. And for me, at the end, I had the luxury knowing it got pretty grim at the end. There was no more palm trees. There was no more sunshine. It was me drinking alone, long binges, not eating. And when you get to that level, you're pretty close to the end, and suicide was right on the horizon again, shall we say. And so I had that luxury of, you don't have to start a podcast. You don't have to do all these things. But here's what's waiting for you if you go back out. So it was kind of like a life or death thing. And then when I distilled it, not the best word for this podcast, but when I reduced it down to that, it's like, well, you could do this. You can do the stuff you don't really want to do, and you probably have a better chance of survival. Or we could do what we were doing before, and I think I'm a goner in the next couple of years. So I did it, and my goodness, guys, I mean, I'm sure y'all know. I'm looking I'm on your website right now, and just the conversations you've had with people in your previous episodes, like that alone is just so inspirational. You're learning stuff. You're getting ideas from other people who have walked the same journey. And same with me. I mean, every time I did an interview, I had my pen on the paper, and I would ask questions, and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going to try that. And I try it the next day. And everything in that book is from what I've learned. And the book that I wrote is from things that I've learned and from things that I've learned from the interviewees. It's been an incredible journey, incredible journey. Yes.
Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind that Nat and I doing this podcast has been probably one of the principal reasons that I've been able to stay sober over the last, few years. You did something you said in your book that really stuck out to me. I mean, obviously when you start a podcast like that, you are putting accountability on yourself in a fairly big way, especially if the podcast becomes successful. Right. And I remember in your book, you said, with respect to accountability, you said, there's a few other things in recovery that are, negotiable, but having accountability is not, right. That's something that you absolutely need to have. And then you discuss the whole, burning of the ships, situation.
Yes, burn the ships. That when you talked about it or wrote about it, it was the first time I actually heard. I think Omar Pinto also was mentioning it, but you really brought that to my attention, and I love that expression.
Yeah,
sure.
So
sure. And here's why I think accountability is the number one most important thing you want to build when you want to quit drinking, because accountability, and you do this by burning the ships. And I didn't make that up. I got it from Hernan Cortez in 1519 when he sailed from Cuba to Veracruz, Mexico, to defeat the Aztecs. The very first thing he did was tell his soldiers to burn the ships. Said the only way we're going back home to Spain is on the Aztecs boats. And guess what the hell happened? For 800 years, people have been trying to defeat the Aztecs. It just didn't happen until somebody burned the ships and gave them no option for return. So yes, this is a metaphor and analogy, but it's based off true events, and it's quite powerful. So when you do burn the ships, you have these conversations that you can't pull back. You can't say, well, you know what I told you last week, Terry, I'm all good now. You can't do that. And so when you burn the ships, and the first person you have to do that with is yourself, Mike and Matt. You guys probably know this. You got to burn the ships with yourself and say, oh shit, I have a major problem here. Sorry about that. I got to get real with myself. And then you have it, then you do it with other people. And what happens, why this is so important, is because the community component solves itself, or segments of it, once you burn the ships. Once you create that accountability by you being honest with yourself and other people, then 99% of human beings, the way we are wired, there are chemicals that are produced inside of us, most importantly oxytocin. This is the connection chemical where the other human being is going to go, oh my God, what can I do to help? I had no idea. Is there anything I could do? Please let me know. So when you create the accountability by burning the ships, the community component almost inevitably happens. Those people are going to be checking up on you. They're going to be calling on you. Like when I first started the podcast, actually, this is a really neat story. This is probably 6 months into doing the Recovery Elevator podcast. I used to own a sports league business. We did flag football, dodgeball, cornhole. It was really fun. It was probably the funnest business I've ever owned.
That's cool.
But I was setting up sponsorships with restaurants and bars. So after you'd play the game, we'd give you a coupon and you'd go and get a 3-thing of nachos and a pitcher of beer. I pulled into one of these. It was kind of like a dive bar, and around 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon to walk in there and chat with the owner. And I was in the restaurant, and it was a dive bar. Like, I'm glad we didn't set this up. But I turn around, and there was this guy that I didn't know very well. I was like, hey, Brandon, right? He looks at me. He's like, yeah, you got it. And I could tell there was just like an awkward look on his face. So I was like, what's up, man? He's like, hey, I know about your podcast, and I know I've heard a couple episodes, and I know you're like quitting drinking or you're sober. And I saw you pull in here, and I just want to make sure you're okay.
Wow.
Wow. I was like, holy buckets. And I just said, oh, dude, like this is so cool. Like, this is how it works, or supposed to work. When you come out about that, other human beings, they want to help. Mm-hmm. And that's what I found in the it's very rare when you burn the ships and you get a non-favorable response, but in the end, still favorable, because then you just eliminate that toxicity from your life instantly.
Wow. And is that where the invitation comes in?
Yes. So I think if you hang out, I'm glad you asked that question. I think if you hang out in the alcohol-free world long enough, alcoholism, whatever you want to call it, a disease or not, is really no different than, let's say, stage 4 cancer or something, or another terminal, or could be potentially terminal. It's an invitation to make a radical change in your life. It's an invitation to get to know you. And I've spoken with many cancer survivors. My mother is one of them that after they get past it, they go, whoa, that was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it makes you look at your values, and you have to look at things and say, is that serving me? Yes. That's not serving me. No, that has to go. And I think people who don't struggle with an addiction or don't reach pain points that are that intense, they don't do that. They don't have the opportunity for a full clearing of house, for a full inner inspection. These things, everything serves a purpose. It's called endowment theory in biology. And addictions, they aren't malfunctions in society. They do serve a purpose. And number one, it's recognizing that something's out of balance. It's the manifestation of an imbalance. And also it's the opportunity or invitation to come back into your soul, to find yourself, to find what inspires you. Well, what's your song? And you need to start singing your song.
Wow. To me, that also sounds like, pain, like physical pain, is just your brain telling you something's wrong. So maybe addiction in that same way is telling you that something internal is wrong. Maybe, it's along those lines. That's very interesting.
For sure. And addiction, same with anxiety and depression. Some of those things are healthy in small amounts, but acute anxiety, acute depression, even those serve a purpose. Like, hey, it's time to go within and get the whiteboard out again, or chalkboard. Start figuring some things out.
You have to be willing to accept the invitation, and I think some people find it a little easier than others to sort of visualize it in that way. But, something Nat and I say all the time on this podcast is, eliminating the external toxin like alcohol or drugs, whatever, is just the first step on a much longer journey. Because unless you go internal afterwards, you're always going to be sort of stuck in that place where you're thinking, man, I wish I could have a drink, or my life is miserable because I can't drink, whatever, because you haven't progressed beyond the point where you've just put down the substance.
Right. And you stop looking at it as a reward. And like you say in your book, alcohol is shit. It's not FOMO. Like at first you have FOMO, fear of missing out on whatever people are doing at bars or using. And, once you cross that line, you get, and as you put it, JOMO, which is the joy of missing out, because there's so many other things now that your life opens up to, better things.
Absolutely. And I think it was Mike, the first part of that was you hit moments that are challenging. Is that what kind of you're asking, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the idea that that you have to first put down the substance before you can move on to the internal work. And prior to that, I guess I was thinking like it's easier for some people to accept the invitation and to see their addiction as something that will eventually lead them to a greater life. And I think some people really struggle with that concept.
Sure. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, it's so there's no, when there's alcohol in your life, there's not a chance that you can self reflect. Everything's skewed, everything's cloudy. Emotions are exacerbated. Your inner guardrails, they're not there, right? So you got to remove that stuff before you can do any of this work. And sometimes you can only remove it for a day, and then you back to drinking. Sometimes you can only remove it for a couple days. Most people think it's one and done. That's what the trajectory looks like. Most people think I quit drinking once, never look back. That's not the case.
Right.
But absolutely, it was you remove it, and then there's a quote I heard that I love. If you want to find out why you quit drinking, you'll find out real quick. Mm. And you do. Yeah. Every life is fast. Life is loud. It's like the volume went from a 5 to a 10 overnight. And you have many moments of like, oh, this effing sucks. Like, I didn't quit drinking for this. And I've said that to myself several times. I didn't quit drinking for this.
Yep, me too. Mm-hmm.
Make the appropriate changes, listen to some things, maybe a different location. Maybe these aren't huge, it's a pick up and move, but maybe it's a different gym. Maybe it's a different meal. I don't know. But then a really cool thing happened with me was the JOMO part. I was able to go out to those events sober, had a lot of fun, did a lot of dancing, as I mentioned, Las Vegas a couple times. In this last year, I left my fantasy football league. That used to be a big part of my life. And it was a challenging one for me, my goodness. But the voice kept going louder and louder of like, look, it's not healthy for you. It's not fun. Because we would do a fantasy football draft in person every year. We'd all travel somewhere. And it was 3 nights of just debauchery. And they were so supportive. Mm-hmm. Like they always let me pick the biggest room. They were incredible people. My brothers in the league, so supportive. But this last year was the first year I didn't go. And I remember the weekend of the draft, I was sitting there. I was hanging out with my dog, like outside, watching the sunset. And I'm like, I am very content where I'm at right now. And I'm happy they're at where they're at. But it was a JOMO. And it was a very thankful and appreciative moment. But yes. There was a voice inside, and I'm glad I listened to it.
Yeah, your brain definitely rewires to the point where the things that were, you thought indispensable to you, may not necessarily be serving you as your brain changes and you enter into a more sober lifestyle. The other thing I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about was, accountability is one of the pillars, that recovery rests on, and another one is connection with other people. I think just about everybody from Gabor Mate to whoever else says that the opposite of addiction is connection. So you not only started a podcast when you started Recovery Elevator, but you also started a community and an online community. And I was wondering, how long after you started the podcast did you get the idea to start something that would bring people together, like through Cafe RE, for example?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say probably about a year after the podcast, I had a listener email and mention, hey, we should start about a Facebook group. And that member is actually still in our groups. His name is Robert, and he's been interviewed on the podcast. Awesome guy. Met him in person, and that was a free group for about a year, and then we transitioned to the paid group, which was hard. It was a hard transition to make, but at the end of the day, we were able to provide better services. It wasn't sustainable. It was just a lot of my time.
Sure.
Too much time to volunteer.
Right.
But,
right.
And then we did that in April 2016 is when we started Cafe RE, the closed private groups with the paid model. And with that, we still, any email that says, hey, I can't afford $24 a month, I can only do $1 a month. We've never declined. It's you pick the price, right? It's more than about the money. And they've been going well. There are challenges like any community, in person and online. But at the end of the day, we all come together and recognize the most important thing is quitting drinking. And sure, there have been a couple of disagreements in the groups, like any group.
Right.
But you take alcohol out of the equation, and then it's we can handle it as adults and move along.
Yeah, I like the fact that you also sort of incorporate, in addition to the online component, you have hikes and meetups of people in different locations, different cities, and so on. And you even arrange sober travel from time to time, right?
Yeah, they sound so awesome. Paul, every time I would hear you on your show talk about whatever retreat you were planning in some far-flung tropical place, I was always like, man, someday I'm going to get there. It's so hard to get away from, family and my business and all this stuff. But that is definitely one of my, future goals is to make it to a recovery elevator retreat in Costa Rica.
Yeah. Well, Matt, we'd love to have you. You too, Mike. I would recommend going on any retreat. I've been to a bunch of them, but they don't have to be like 10-day travel trips. But those were really powerful for me. Like I've been to a couple of meditation retreats, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Sue Mortar.
That's so awesome.
We have our own retreats. It's a huge investment. It's a big investment in yourself. We love.
We'll get there one of these days.
You'll have a.
No,
what about we do? How about we do a meetup? And once you do one meetup,
yeah,
I thought I was getting lucky with these meetups, because then they were going really well, and it wasn't really much that I was doing. It's the magic of you get 10 people together who have the biggest theme in their life at that moment is quitting drinking, and the pain points are pretty intense, and most of them have been walking or going through life suppressing most of that energy or emotions. Some of them had yet to tell their spouses or whatnot. And so you get a handful of people, 10 people together. It could be just a picnic bench at a park. The magic happens pretty quick. And it's quite fun. And you can see, the connection is a very important piece of this.
Yeah, it's like the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy, lands in Oz, and all of a sudden it's color. In a lot of ways, coming through the fog of the drinking fog or addiction, it really is like that. And it's amazing to see that in people's eyes. It's inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You mentioned going on a retreat with Dr. Dispenza, and I think his thing is that you're your own placebo or something. I mean, I think Howard Stern was involved with him also. It's sort of like he has this idea that a lot of physical pain in the body, like back pain and whatever, is really emotionally based. Do I have that right?
Oh, right. This is really interesting. I remember Howard talking about this. Yeah, where he has case studies of people who literally, solved their back pain that was chronic and unsolvable, and it was through these techniques, mental stuff.
How do you see that fitting in with recovery, Paul?
Yeah, there's a ton of overlap, and Dr. Joe Dispenza isn't quite in the recovery world. I've been to two of his events, but you do meet several sober people who, or are, you know, that's an issue in their life is alcohol. Yeah, Dr. It's incredible work what he does, and you are correct. A lot of it is working with the body and the mind and feelings, as in the most powerful pharmacy on the planet is in your brain. And injuries and back pain and inflammation, it's much more complicated than we perceive, especially in the Western medicine. Western medicine doesn't do anything for the source, but it gives you a pill or a surgery to work on what's hurting at the moment, but it doesn't get to the source. And a lot of this stuff is vibrations. It is incoherence within the body, things not vibrating at the right frequencies, like individual organs and the heart and the brain. He's really big on meditation. And with a lot of that stuff, you just have to get yourself in a quiet and peaceful, relaxed state. You activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part which turns on the calm. It's time to rest. It's time to relax. It's time to create. And the body can do the rest. Because then there's millions of years of information in your DNA that the body knows what to do when it's not in fight or flight. And the issue here, Nat and Mike, I think living in the 2021, and there's a lot of anthropologists agree. In fact, most anthropologists agree that addiction is a modern phenomenon, that we're almost living in a very low level grade of fight or flight. There's so much noise in our environment, so many dings, emails, phone calls, stressors, bills, job loss. We just went through a big pandemic that it's really hard to get the body in a sense of calm and a sense of rest and relaxation. Now, this is huge with recovery work, right? Because you hear, oh, meditation is so big for recovery. And I agree. But if you sit down and meditate and you're almost in like a low level fight or flight, it's quite uncomfortable and really not much is happening.
Yeah.
Because there's still chemical signals in your body that's saying, look, there's a threat. There's a grizzly bear right outside that door, maybe inside this room. We gotta go. And so, I wish I knew a little bit more about my nervous system when I first quit drinking, but at the same time, like I wasn't ready to do that type of work when I first quit drinking. I mean, it's kind of impractical for somebody on day one to sit on a couch and meditate for 20 minutes. It's doable, but it's going to be painful and, almost maybe want to keep moving at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you bring up. This is something we debated about because we talk about different modalities. We talk about AA and we talk about alternatives. And sort of the debate when Mike and I don't always agree, like one of the things we're still figuring out is when you have a person who is, let's call it, just for the sake of description, like a low bottom addict, where you're, in medical trouble, you're at the worst possible place you've ever been, is that a great time for you to try Annie Grace's, 30-day alcohol experiment? Or is it more like a triage where, you should be in a hospital first, then you should move to a more professional, outpatient or inpatient, and then you sort of, your treatment should like sort of evolve. I think, maybe that's when an AA community is perfect toward the beginning because you get wrapped in this undying love and support, But as you begin to progress and finally your mind can start processing things, maybe you can move on to something like an Alcohol is Shit or an Annie Grace program, Smart Recovery, and really start thinking about, your addictions and what's causing them. But there's definitely that triage where, when you first are trying to get sober, maybe you can't do all of the stuff that involves thinking necessarily. I mean, what do you think about that as far as someone who's like just trying to get sober, but they're still dealing with the medical withdrawal repercussions in their life?
For sure. Good question. I like the word triage there. And when we're specifically talking about low bottom drunks, it's important to remember what's on the line here. And at that level, it's always your life. With your life, crucial steps need to be taken, despite what the thinking mind is telling the person. The thinking mind is we need more alcohol. We don't have a problem. But if you're a low bottom drunk, yes, absolutely. I would say detox in a medical facility. And if you can, get yourself in a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day in-treatment facility. You need to remove yourself from an environment where there's alcohol. You need to put yourself in a safe environment. And that's hard to do without a treatment setup, right? Maybe you can find friends and family. You can set up the accountability. That's hard. But when your life is on the line, you got to go way further than just, I think this will work. I think I should be fine. You got to play it like it's way worse than it is, because it is that bad. It's way worse than your thinking mind is telling you it is. And then I think kind of a window and opportunity in this space is, a lot of people, it's hard. Sometimes people crash and burn after rehab, right? They'll do 30 days inpatient treatment, and then you hear it. On the drive home, I ended up at a bar. And so I think there needs to be more support after that. Obviously at a cheaper price point, because rehab can be quite expensive, and thankfully insurance is starting to cover that stuff. But something that's another week or two, maybe outdoors, maybe with healthy food, more community connection, and these things exist. It's just you got to find them. It's hard to navigate. But yeah, low bottom drunk, you need to remove yourself from the environment that the addiction was fueling upon.
Yeah, interesting. Because a lot of when you first quit, your mind is like really kind of Swiss cheese, and like you said, the whole fight or flight business. Is that your thinking mind, or is that your non-thinking mind? I mean, because in your book you say that it's you're unable to think your way out of addiction because thinking is the driver of addiction, right? So you have to separate yourself from your thoughts, or at least have your, I guess what they call in Buddhism is like the watcher. You have to separate the watcher from the steady stream of thoughts that are going through your brain. What do you recommend? How do you recommend that people start down that journey? Because I have a few ideas, and I know what Buddhism says to do, but you're getting a lot of people who are getting into recovery and just encountering this idea that they're not their thoughts for the first time. How would you recommend they start down that road?
Yeah, for sure. I actually want to cover a little bit more on my last answer there with the low bottom. With the high bottom thing, most people, high bottom drunks, most people don't need treatment or rehab. They can do this on their own, but they have to put in some sort of accountability with a therapist or AA or things like that. Okay. And I like this other question. How do you do it? And I am a firm believer that you can't think yourself out of an addiction. You can't read yourself out of an addiction. It's a great way to start, and it's the way most people do. It's empowering to fill your brain with information about what alcohol does to the body, the dangers of it, and possible pathways to quit. But the reason why, and there's a bunch, but here are the big ones, is the thinking brain is a snapshot of the past, everything that's happened in the past up till now. And when we find ourselves in these difficult life situations, life stressors, COVID just gave us, hundreds of them each, every person. The thinking mind will scour the past for what worked, what was the most effective way to get ourselves out of this immediate threat, whether it's physical, emotional, that doesn't really matter. And when the shit gets tough, when it's hard enough, that's when alcohol is going to rise to the very top of that list every time. And so that's at the end of the day, that's not a good plan. It's just your knowledge. You're going to need to have at least some sort of plan when the shit gets real, of where to go, AA meeting, friends, family support, therapist, things like that. But a good way to start with this, Mike and Nat, is what you just said. It's a very powerful. It's a powerful saying that you are not your thoughts. You're the one that hears it. And everybody, I think you make a transition, and this is part of the invitation, as we discussed earlier, is you make a transition from academically knowing that or philosophically knowing that. Like you read it in a book and say, hooray, I'm not my thoughts. But then later that day, they get a thought that they're not worth it. And every chemical in their body latches onto that and says, yes, we're not worth it. So it takes a while to start, disassociating from those thoughts. And a cool thing is they're more awakened or enlightened. You call it whatever you want, but there are more emotionally intelligent people these days. And sometimes they're Pixar movie creators or Disney creators. I saw a movie called Luca a couple months ago. And,
great movie.
Yeah, the characters were saying Silencio Bruno. There's like a voice inside the head, and the character was like, when that voice shows up, just say Silencio Bruno. And it's neat to see that stuff in Disney movies where kids are getting that education now, because that thought in the head, we are fully identified with it. And I think this is also the purpose of what's supposed to happen as being a human. In fact, the Ankh, it's like a cross with two circles at the top. That is basically what that representing is, where we split at like the age 5 or 7. We split from source, and we're fully identified with the thinking mind. And then in spirituality, later in life, we recognize, we're not the thinking mind. We are more than a name. We are more than the bundle of thoughts that we have created that create our identity. And then it's separating that stuff. And there's no checkbox. It's like, hey guys, I've done it. I am no longer my thoughts. It's a continual work in process. And sometimes you take a couple steps back. But it's almost saying, well, voice, you are extremely convincing, but it is going to be my life mission to see if you're full of shit or not.
and that it's perfect that you said that, because that's a perfect segue to exactly what I wanted to ask you about next, which is the inner addict. And you talk about this in Alcohol is Shit toward the beginning, and I love this concept. I don't remember when I first heard it or started implementing it, but I've found myself when I'm working with other alcoholics and I'm trying to talk them through like tools and techniques to not drink, just to get through the day. I've been relying on that a lot. Like, it's your inner addict. It's the thoughts that are not you. And I find it's very effective. It was for me to like identify this voice and to distrust it. And what I say is, whatever that addict inside you is saying, you do the opposite, because they want you dead. They're trying to destroy your life. So, by identifying that and separating yourself, I think that's huge. It's a big concept. I think that goes a long way, at least for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I named my addiction Gary, like my 1 or 2 years in. And a year ago, I was reading a book about Native Americans and their tribes and their traditions, and the shamans recognized that they first needed to name something or personify an illness or a disease or a spirit before they could start working with it. And it intellectually, or even at the cellular level, I guess you separate from it a little bit. You begin to detach that process right then by saying, I am me, that's Gary, that's Bruno, that's whatever you want to call it, but that's who I'm not attacking. And I also think that's an important thing too. We go to fight our addiction. The war against cancer. I mean, some of these things, they're powerful messengers, and we can't fight it. We have to listen to what these things are trying to tell us. And once we name it, then we can start working with the addiction, working with those energies that are no longer serving us.
Yeah.
There's a lot we can learn from those native cultures.
Absolutely. Yeah, it reminds me, and I was just saying this earlier, I'm a big fan of the paranormal and those types of movies and stuff like that. And it's always like, in order to get control of the demon that's possessing the person, they have to find out the name, and they spend all this time like, what's your name? When they finally get it, it's like Baphomet. Once they do that, they have control, they've got some power over this demon. And that's what it reminds me of in my twisted paranormal fantasy.
I'm sure that's based off some truth there for sure. I love it.
Well, we don't want to take up too much more of your time.
Yes, we do.
Well, we could. I could talk to you all day, but
we're okay.
What do you have on the horizon for Recovery Elevator and Cafe RE and all that? I mean, you mentioned buying some land in Costa Rica. I mean, and I think listening to your podcast over the last couple of years, I think I recall you saying a few times that you'd love to set up some kind of a retreat center or something down there. So anything in the works beyond the high fantasy stage, or
just give us the inside scoop. What are you planning, Paul?
Well, first off, a big thing I've learned is my pace was a little faster than the pace of the universe. And so I want to slow it down. I need to keep things simple in my life. I need to go slow. I almost put myself in a huge problem when I quit drinking in 2014, I and everybody does this. Not everybody, but I replaced alcohol with work, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's transfer addiction. It's way healthier than alcohol, and exercise. And I mean, it's a lot of people do that. They quit drinking and then, wow, I'm binging Netflix or I'm eating ice cream. I just dove right into work, which was healthier, but I still had to rein that in, and I need to slow it down. So that is correct. I did. I purchased a little bit of land and some structures in Costa Rica. I'm in the process of doing that, but I need to go down there first for Pablo, for my little inner child there, and I plan on getting to know the property. It's a little bit of land, and I want to play the ukulele and walk around and see as many sunsets as I can with my dog, Ben. I want to get to know what types of trees are there, what the names of the plants and species are, and I want to find as many snakes as I can. And then when the ideas show up, of course I have some, but what I've learned is I'll look at a tree and I'll see another tree and go, oh my gosh, we're putting a platform up there. Oh, we're doing a zip line. Oh, that's a sunset. Like I kind of want to wait to see if that stuff's organic, just how it happens. But I do down the road. I love this type of work, and I do envision down the road running some sort of retreats there, or it might even be just Cafe RE. It might even be a coffee shop called Cafe RE at the top of a sunset deck. Like I don't know. But at the moment with RE, we want to keep it simple and slow. We do probably 3 events a year. We have a sober travel trip. We're going to Costa Rica this January 15th. We do a conference style event. We're in Denver this March 31st, April 2nd. It's like a hotel event. And then we have a retreat event, which is in Bozeman, Montana. That's like cabins kind of in nature. So part of me wants to do a ton of events each year, but we're still in COVID, and that's been, that's been, my God, COVID has been a wonderful teacher. it's too good of a teacher at times. Just putting on events in COVID, it's like, holy crap, this is really stressful. So I just got to keep it simple, and I'm just got to go slow with things. But that is on the horizon. And another thing I'm very excited about, guys, is I'm doing a sober ukulele course starting February 5th.
That's
awesome.
So cool. I just got a ukulele for my 11-year-old, and I've been messing around.
I was just playing mine last night.
Were you really?
On the wall.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's a bizarre synchronicity. But
it really is.
It's But Paul, I love your outlook. I love your perspective. And one of the things that I get a lot out of when I listen to your podcast, when you're hosting, or your book, it's this, you have a wonderful sense of the present and the now. And, like just the way you described what you were going to do. We asked you a leading question, like, what are your plans, and you took it back and brought it back into the now. And you were like, you know what? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to just see how I feel. I'm going to experience it. And I'll be inspired by, the trees. And I think, of course we have to do some planning in life, but backing off of that kind of thing and living in the moment, I think that is one of the best lessons that we could learn from listening to the way you live your life and the way you conduct your business. It's really inspiring.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike, for saying that. About probably a month and a half ago, I was in a coffee shop, and I was writing a business plan for this idea for Costa Rica. And I was about 8 pages in, and I like doing this stuff. It's fun for me. Mm-hmm. And I just sat there. I was like, what am I doing? And I shut the laptop, not in like a dramatic fashion. I'm like, I'm out of here. I just shut the laptop and started drinking my tea. And I was like, I'm not going to do this right now for this project, because I'm going to get down there and I'm just going to see what the universe wants to have unfold for this project. Because this business plan is going to be outdated the second week I move in, right?
Sure.
So, I just want to go there and see what happens.
That's awesome. We're looking forward to whatever it is, Paul.
Yeah.
I'd love to meet you guys in person someday, for sure.
Cool. It's going to happen. It's on my vision board, get to
I hope so.
A recovery elevator retreat. It's one of my, I love it.
Yeah, they're fun. And if you come to one of ours and then you decide to do your own down the road, more power to you. That's how it should work.
Super, man. Oh, I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out to Odette and the rest of the team over there at Recovery Elevator. She certainly did yeoman's work when you stepped away for a little while a couple of years ago. Really appreciated her insights and everything. And, she does great interviews now. And I guess, that delegation is, as sort of like a founder-led podcast. That must have been difficult to step away for a little bit, no?
Yeah, that must have been hard.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Odette and the team, because the stuff that they have done has been absolutely incredible. And it was a challenge, but Odette is so talented at what she does, and it was pretty easy. That part surprising. But the team, there's 9 of us each Monday on a weekly call. And it's cool to be in a work environment where recovery is open. There's nothing we all know, right?
Right.
Many of us have had our interviews aired on the podcast. So it's almost it's a workplace, but that has deep emotional ties, where our own sobriety comes first every time. And it's not even a question, no questions asked, right? So that's what you got to do. I get it. No problem. And I had that was hard for me when I quit drinking. It was to delegate. I'm not the best. I'm a visionary. I'm not the best manager. So I'll tell you right now, like, there's a gal named K-Mac and Odette and Chris. They pretty much run Cafe RE, and I'm there to do the meetings, and I have ideas and stuff, but they do most of the day-to-day stuff. They're so awesome, which allows me to go to Costa Rica and get this other stuff set up. The ukulele course. That's because I have the time now, because they're assisting with other things.
That's so great. And that takes a tremendous amount of faith, what you did. And I have to say, as a listener of Recovery Elevator, when you first said, this is it for me. I of course didn't listen closely enough to realize that you would come back, but I was like, what is this guy doing? You know what I mean? And I was a little bit angry, and I'm sure you got some emails. I'm like, how could he leave me? I'm depending on this. And you know what? Ultimately, though, I listened when Odette came back on. I was like, oh, let me see. I mean, Paul knows what he's doing. If he says she should do, and man, I was glad that I did, because she really carried the mantle, carried the message. And you did, you're back in doing the intros, and you're, back involved with it. And that extremely, how was that to turn it all over and, go away? And, that takes so much self-control and faith, I feel like.
Sure. And there's no way I could have done it in the first couple of years of sobriety. I do go to AA and probably once a week, right? That's even pushing it. It's probably twice a month. But there's no way I could have done that without learning what I've learned on this recovery journey. Most of it's acceptance. Is you just, hey, whatever happens, happens. I can either be upset about it or even happy about it. It doesn't matter. Those are emotions getting thrown to a life event. And so, as I mentioned, fortunately, it went pretty smooth, and that's so talented. But it was a great life experience, just like training for a bigger stage later. I imagine. Yeah.
Cool. Well, folks, I would urge you to go to Amazon and purchase Paul's book, Alcohol is Shit. It's a great read, and I think you'll really enjoy it.
Too.
The listen is good.
Yeah,
if you do the Audible. I always love it.
I read it. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I love it when authors read their own works, because you get the inflection. The inflections are just right.
Yeah.
Sure.
You can check out Recovery Elevator wherever fine podcasts are available. And if you're of a mind, check out Cafe RE and all the other stuff that Paul's doing. Paul, thanks a lot for coming on today. We really appreciate it. And it was great talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. This was great. Really was. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mike, Nat, the pleasure is all mine, and keep doing what you're doing. You guys are helping a lot of people. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here with you.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Hey.
All right.
We handled the most awkward part of every interview relatively well.
Yeah, that was not bad.
You were just like, bye.
Well, I
don't know what to say. You don't want to hang up on him. I know I say this every time.
We could have gone on probably for another hour with him, but he's fascinating.
Really, that was great. And I think we need to take a quick break.
One more break, okay.
And we'll be back after these words.
And we're back.
Wow.
Hey, we should go buy a big piece of land in Costa Rica and wander around on it and think about where to put the zip lines. I'd be totally into that.
I love talking to Paul Churchill, and it's funny because I've listened to hundreds of hours of him talking.
Yeah, seriously,
his
right?
book, and he's so genuine, and you could tell like the way he is on his podcast, and he puts it all out there, and I got that same feel talking to him that I did with Joseph W. Nouse. That sort of
Joseph W. Nouse.
You got to give him the whole, so people could look it up and buy his book, Straight Pepper Diet,
or False Graph Robot.
Right, and I just got that feeling of that he exudes this confidence and equanimity, and just comfortable. Like he's so comfortable with how he's flowing with the universe that he can just buy, land in Costa Rica,
well,
and it'll come to me.
I mean, like Annie Grace, he's like the scion of a recovery empire of his own making.
It's very cool.
It's interesting that he, just started this thing as an accountability project, and it became what it became.
And he's another podcast host now that has admitted that doing the podcast is like part of the program to stay sober. So I'm still working on convincing Dave that
I think Dave probably
doing
believes
dopey
that.
helps him stay sober.
Right.
So long show,
and a little more to go. Should we keep going?
Recovery in the news. Yeah. All right. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news.
No matter how many times I hear you do that, it will still make me laugh.
I don't even know when I came up with it.
I don't
gotta go back and listen.
It's like your signature. You should go on like Cameo and offer to do that on people's answering machines or something.
Yeah, so get us on Cameo and I'll do your answering machine message.
Yes. Recovery in the news this week is an article from the New York Post. Which I'm usually not much to quote.
No.
It's not my favorite paper.
It's
but
kind of a trashy paper.
Anyway, the article title was Meet the Marathon Runner Who Used to Be a Crack Addict.
Yay.
And More Extremists. So I guess they got their hook is the marathon runner who used to be the crack addict, and then they throw the other extremists in at the end.
Bury the lead.
I happen to know this guy, not personally, although we've exchanged a couple of messages on Facebook here and there. Anyway, I'll read a little bit of it. When it came to smoking crack, Charlie Engle was the best. That's a good start to an article. Yeah. He was pretty good at drinking too. It was only in his late 20s that he finally managed to quit and took up ultra running instead. 3 years ago, age 56, he celebrated 27 years of sobriety by running for 27 hours straight.
Wow.
Part of ultra running is a desire to be different, he says.
Smoking crack.
And for the drug addict, too, there is a deep need to separate ourselves from the crowd. I love this part. It sounds crazy to say this, but street people would tell me, you could smoke more crack than anybody I've ever seen. And there was a weird, that's right.
That's me.
There's still part of me that wants to be validated through doing things that other people can't. And that's really interesting when you think about it.
Is that a form of schadenfreude?
Well, the need for validation that lives inside of every, person with an addictive disorder.
I get it.
They need to feel the validation from outside. So you go out and you run 27 miles because there's a certain amount of publicity and public attention that you'll get for doing something like that.
Yeah.
The article goes on to talk to a bunch of other people who also do extreme things. But there's a book, Everything Harder Than Everyone Else, Why Some of Us Push Ourselves to Extremes, by Jenny Valentish, examines what drives people to go above and beyond what most of us consider safe, tasteful, or rational. So, there's this idea that if you push your body to an extreme like that, it's basically you're engaging in self-harm. Sort of like addiction is engaging in self-harm. But is it? For me, I run every day. I get up at 0 dark 30 and I go run 5 miles every single day of my life.
Sounds painful.
Even it is. And then I wonder, I have a hard time taking a day off because I feel weird inside of my head if I do that.
You don't get the dopamine.
I don't get the dopamine. I don't get whatever that thing is doing for me. Now, I don't have it to the degree of a Charlie Engle where I have to go out and run. And if you guys want to know more about Charlie Engle, he's a fascinating guy. He was actually ended up in a federal prison this is not in the article, but he ended up in federal prison, not for crack use, but because he was a mortgage broker, and he was one of the few people in the aftermath of the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 who was prosecuted for, I think he filled out somebody's income wrong on a mortgage application, which every mortgage broker in the United States was doing that, but they decided that they were going to make an example of Charlie. He went back to prison. He didn't relapse. He came out and he, embarked on all these crazy running things. There's a movie called Running the Sahara that he is in, and it used to be on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's there anymore. Maybe it's on Amazon, but check that out, because Charlie is an interesting guy. But
reminds me of Rich Roll, that book that we
Finding Ultra.
Yeah. Did we talk about that book on the show?
We have not, because I was kind of hoping that we would be able to get Rich Roll on the show.
No way. He's coming on this show?
Yeah, he went on Dopey.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, but Dopey, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, I assume Dave's got his contact info, right?
Right. No, but it's amazing. I'm still like, we've had a few guests now, not a ton, but and we're going to have another. I have a very big guest that we just got to agree to come on.
That's
very
going to be a good
about
one.
it. That's going to be a surprise. So it's very cool that we're starting to get these people who I look up to, and this is definitely be cool if we could get Rich Roll. Finding Ultra.
Yeah, and so an interesting stuff between the juxtaposition of self-harm through quote unquote healthy activities and self-harm through less than healthy activities, and that may bear some more explanation in a future episode, and that's Recovery in the News.
Yeah. All right. Recovery in the News.
Sort of an abbreviated Recovery in the News, because we're at the 1 hour and 46 minute mark.
Hey, I could have kept talking to Paul Churchill forever. Anyway, Week in Weird. Crashed flying saucer spotted on Mars by who? Tim Banal.
He was on Mars?
He was writing about someone who writing about spotting.
Because
something.
If anybody should go to Mars, it's probably Tim Banal.
I'm sure
There's
been
lots
there.
of faces to investigate and whatnot.
Well, speaking of things to investigate on Mars, an anomaly hunter scouring NASA images for intriguing oddities on Mars spotted what appears to be a crashed flying saucer on the surface of the red planet.
Of course.
South African researcher Gene Ward made the weird discovery when he was looking at a photo taken by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter back in December of 2006. While the image may be a whopping 15 years old.
Whopping.
The researchers' fresh examination of the picture uncovered the curious scene, which has been hiding in plain sight for all these years. In the photo, a curious object with a distinctly rounded edge can be seen, seemingly half buried in the Martian dirt with a long streak behind it.
It's a rock.
No, you got to see this. We'll have to post it. There's like a video of him like explaining it. It's really cool. Indicating that the anomaly looks to be about 40 to 50 feet in diameter. Ward theorized that the oddity could be some kind of disc-shaped ship that, quote, hit the surface of Mars at a very low angle.
Could be.
Alternatively, he posited that the strange streak behind the peculiar shape might be indicative of a, quote, ramp leading into an underground entrance, definitely. While either fantastic scenario suggested by Ward would be undoubtedly welcome news to UFO enthusiasts who believe that Mars was once inhabited by a race of intelligent extraterrestrials, it should come as no surprise that the skeptical observers have a different take on the anomaly spotted on the surface of the red planet. Rather than a crashed flying saucer or a secret path into a subterranean alien base, they argue that the oddity is likely to be merely a trick of light and shadow.
Yes,
of course.
That's what I would argue.
That's what everything is.
It is a trick of light and shadow.
Monsters, let me tell you, we'll put this on the show notes. This is a flying saucer crashed on Mars.
Okay.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely no doubt.
No doubt.
And this is a phenomenon that's happened since NASA's been publishing these satellite images of the entire moon.
What, people have been mistaking rocks for flying saucers?
Well, that's part of it. What they have these people who call themselves oddity hunters, and they scour because they publish all these photos. But there's 100,000 photos that they've published. It's on NASA's website, and there are some people who spend all day, picture by picture, just looking, scouring, zooming in, and then they'll find something that looks, different, and then they post it and they do press conferences. It's pretty funny, but it's a whole.
Everybody's got to make a living.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, and that It's weak and weird. Well, geez, that about does it for today.
Well, geez.
Well, geez. I know I had a great time. Did you?
Yeah, sure. I had an awesome time.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Join the RMA movement at patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages for all the extras you didn't know you wanted. Buy a t-shirt, write us an email, visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, and tweet us at TwatUTwit on Twitter. Support your favorite show. Drop a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Please, we need some more reviews. And then we'll read it on the show. Find us at our private Facebook group. It's currently free. After talking to Paul Churchill.
Maybe we should be charging for it.
Yeah, but it's totally free. You just sign up and, we like to talk to you guys on there and we have discussions. But the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. If you get something out of our little show, please share the love and help grow the RMA movement. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Be good.
Yeah.